Hey, what is going on guys, RvzStealth here, and in today's video we're going to be breaking down 15 of the best champions that will help you escape low elo for Season 10. We're going to be going over 3 champions for each role, and hopefully I do remember to add timestamps down below to each role, so if you do want to skip ahead to a certain role, you can do so. But if we start off here up in the top lane, first pick is going to be Darius. So Darius is just overall a great pick for lower elo. He's pretty simple to pick up. He's got a very strong early game, really good snowball potential, and a lot of players, especially in the lower elos, are not going to respect his early game, not going to respect his early game all-in potential. So you're going to find yourself, like, once you start to learn Darius, once you really start to understand the champion, you're going to find yourself getting a ton of solo kills in the early game with the pick. You're going to be able to take over games. His 1v2 potential when you get ahead with this champion is insanely good. So even if your team's not doing too great, if you can get ahead yourself and you can get into a side lane and start 1v2ing, then you can still completely solo carry games on this champion. So another really solid top lane pick for the majority of elos at the moment is Malphite, and he's especially good for the lower ranks just because he's a pretty easy champion to play and he's just so strong come the mid to late game team fights. Malphite is one of the easiest yet strongest team fight champion in the game because you just hit your ultimate on the enemy AD carry in every fight, or if the enemy team is all grouped up, you just throw your ultimate in there and you're going to have a lot of success just by getting good ultimates off with this champion. Once you get level 6 with the champion, if you don't see yourself getting a solo kill in lane, if you're in a more difficult matchup, I just think if you can really master learning how to teleport down bot lane with Malphite, getting good TP flanks off to help your bot lane out, and just transitioning that into some dragons in the early game, you can do really well on Malphite for Season 10. I just think that mastering your team fight on the champion, mastering your teleport flank plays are going to allow you to just climb a ton with this champion for Season 10. And then Warwick is going to be my final top lane pick here. So one of the best split pushing top laners you can play for the lower elos. He's very easy to play, yet his split push is still extremely strong. Your ultimate, your ghouls, your Q damage, your Trinity force there is just going to allow you to shred through towers. And I even forgot demolish. Like, you just have so much tower pushing potential with this champion, and the enemy team, like, if you get ahead with Warwick, they're gonna have to send multiple members to the side lane to deal with you. You're gonna be able to 1v2 on this pick. He also has the ability to very easily solo out a Rift Herald for himself in the early game. So if you get ahead on Warwick, then you can grab Rift Herald. You're gonna find yourself, like, if you play this champion well, if you get ahead in the early game, you'll find yourself like taking down 2 towers before your team has even taken down 1. That's just how strong his tower pushing ability is. You can also look to take Baron very early on in the game with this champion. As long as your ultimate is up and as long as you have like one other teammate with you, then you can take Baron at 20 minutes a lot of the time with just 2 champions. So especially for the lower ranks, players aren't going to be expecting a 20-minute Baron. So if you can understand in which situations you can look to go for those early Barons with Warwick, then you can snowball games and just single-handedly win games with this champion. So moving on to the jungle now, a pick that does rise up in patch 10.1 to start off Season 10 is Shyvana. So Shyvana Jungle is a pretty strong pick for the meta we're in right now because she's pretty easy to play. She does have very good dragon control in the early game. She's one of the strongest champions in the game at soloing out those early dragons. Once you hit level 6 on Shyvana, she does have very strong dueling potential, very good all-in potential against most junglers, especially if you do end up going for the Runic Echoes route on Shyvana. If you go Runic Echoes, you go for the Dark Harvest as well. Enemy teams are really not going to be expecting the amount of damage coming out of your E when you're in your ultimate form, and you're just going to be able to get a ton of poke damage off. You're going to be able to burst out champions and they won't even know what hit them a lot of the time. I really like the pick as well because you do have that option of going for AD. If your team comp is pretty AP heavy, you can go for a Blood Razor and a Conqueror setup on Shyvana. You don't have to go for AP. So if you're picking this champion every single game, it's gonna fit into most compositions. Like, you're gonna be able to make it work, and you're not gonna have just heavy AD or heavy AP. You're gonna be able to itemize depending on what your team needs. So for my second jungle pick here, and probably the #1 jungle that I would just recommend spamming in the lower elos right now, is Warwick. He does have better skirmish potential in the early game, better gank potential. You can just completely take over games with Warwick in 10.1 because you do have the ability to very easily invade the enemy jungler in the early game. If you get off a successful invade, then the enemy jungler is just gonna be so far behind and it's gonna be very difficult for them to do anything to get back into the game. You can also look to solo out early dragon super early on with Warwick, so that's a really big pro to him in this current meta. And then also just the fact that you can get around the map so quickly quickly with Warwick's W makes him a great pick for the lower ranks, because your teammates are going to be fighting all the time. They're going to be getting into like skirmishes, and they're going to try to be just fighting non-stop. So with Warwick's W, being able to like instantly get down to a lane or get up to a lane is a really big pro to the champion. And then for my third and final jungle pick, it is going to be Ramus. Ramus is always a great pick for the lower ranks, just because you're going to get super tanky on this pick. You build full tank on the champion. You don't build a single damage item, yet you still deal an immense amount of damage. You're going to be able to pretty much one rotation enemy squishy champions once you get a couple armor items on Ramus. The way your passive works, giving you bonus AD based on the amount of armor you have, just allows him to still be a really good damage threat come those mid to late game fights. Also in the lower ranks, you tend to see a lot more heavy AD compositions. You tend to see a lot more Yasuos being played in the mid lane, a lot more Zeds. You see just more AD champions in general. So Ramus, his ability to just counter those champions makes him an even better pick for the lower ranks. And then for a couple mid lane picks here, my first one is going to be Veigar. So when you're playing this champion in the lower elos, just really focus on getting as much CS as possible in the early game. Just focus on your CS, focus on your Q stacks. Games are going to tend to last a lot longer. Games are going to be thrown a ton in the lower elos, so you're going to be able to scale really nicely with this champion in the mid to late game. Once you do end up finishing like a couple of your core items there, once you get your stacks on your Q, you're going to be able to one-shot pretty much any champion in the game. And you do have some of the best zone control for any champion with Veigar. Just the fact that his glacial augment slows are going to be coming out in team fights. He's got his E cage, which just completely zones out an entire area. So he's one of the best champions at just controlling those objectives in the mid to late game. And if the enemy team does face check into you, it's so easy for you to just throw your cage down and get a free one shot on an enemy squishy target. Another really classic low elo mid lane pick, Annie, is still a pick that I would 100% recommend if you're looking to climb out of the lower elos from the mid lane. She does have very good solo kill potential once she does hit level 6. Her team fight is very straightforward. It's very linear, so it's not going to take you very much time to learn at all. You're going to be looking to do pretty much the same thing in every single team fight, so you can focus on a lot of other things, a lot of macro aspects of the game when playing Annie, because you don't really need to be thinking about a ton of intense combos that you need to be using in fights. Your combos are just going to be pretty much the same for every single fight, so you can really focus on learning the game a lot more when playing this champion. And then for my final mid lane pick, it's going to be Malzahar, and similar to the previous two champions, he's just a very straightforward pick, so it really allows you to focus on other aspects of the game that are a lot more important. With Malzahar, you know you got that clear win condition of just finding picks with your ultimate. Your ultimate is one of the strongest just ultimate abilities in the game, so if you're able to just use that when the enemy face checks into you for an objective, or you just find flash ult plays when the enemies are caught out of position, it's going to allow your team to get into a ton of 5v4 scenarios. And if you get into those 5v4 scenarios, the enemy team oftentimes is still going to look to fight into you, especially if you're going for a dragon or if you're going for Baron. So you're gonna just put yourself into a ton of favorable situations just due to the fact that Malzahar's ultimate is such a strong tool. And then heading down to the bot lane here for a couple picks, my first AD carry of choice is going to be Senna. So I really don't think Senna is very difficult to pick up. I'd say out of all the champions that have been released in the past year, she's probably the easiest champion to pick up. I think she's a great AD carry pick for the lower elos because she provides her team with more than just damage. She provides her team with a lot of utility. You have the ability to heal your team with Senna. You got the shield from your ultimate. You got the pick potential with your W there. And also, if you do go for this glacial augment setup on Senna, you just provide your team with even more utility. The slow coming out of your Q from the glacial augment allows you to find a lot more picks. It allows you to line up your W a lot easier. You're going to be able to get a lot more soul stacks in the early game as well, because you're going to be able to stick onto the opponent a lot better. So especially if you haven't tried out this glacial augment setup on Senna, look to do so in your future games. Alright, so if you do not have Misfortune in your champion pool right now and you're looking to climb out a low elo for the AD carry role, I don't really know what you're thinking. You should have this champion 100% in your champion pool if your main goal is to climb for season 10, because this champion's always been a great pick for the lower ranks, but she's just so strong right now in the current meta for pretty much any elo. She's just so good right now because of this new build setup on her, the fact that she does have really good skirmish potential throughout the early to mid game. Her early game team fight there, or just her early to mid game team fight at those dragon fights can be so influential for your team for just securing those early objectives. So I just think that because this champion is super easy to execute and because she is so strong in the meta right now, you should have her in your champion pool 100%. And then for my final AD carry, it's going to be Ashe, and Ashe is another champion who is pretty straightforward for the most part, not a ton of mechanical skill. You're going to have a lot of success pretty early on when you start to pick up this champion. She's great for the meta we're in right now too, because if you pair her up with a Leona, a Not, a Blitz, just any aggro support, hit that level 6 and you have a clear win condition with Ashe. Once you get level 6 on the pick, you should be looking to just coordinate with your support, ping on the way, just tell them you're going to be looking to engage, hit your ultimate at level 6, and if you can do that consistently on Ashe, you're going to find yourself having a lot of success throughout Season 10. And then to round out the video for support here, if you're looking to climb out of the support role for Season 10, look to start playing an aggro support. It really doesn't matter what aggro support to play. I'll give you a couple recommendations here, but I'd just be staying away from the more passive supports because you're just more so coin flipping on those champions. You're more so relying on your AD carry, relying on your team to allow you to carry them. Like champions like Senna, for example, can do very well come the mid to late game if your team is doing well, but if your team's not doing well, you don't really have anything to support with Senna. You don't have the ability to just solo carry games on the pick, so I'd be sticking to champions like Swain here. So Swain is a really good pick for the lower ranks. He does have a ton of kill pressure in the laning phase. You don't see this champion a lot, so players are really going to underestimate his E range. You're going to find a lot of picks with your E throughout the laning phase, and you're going to find yourself just getting multiple kills in the early game with Swain. If you're playing this champion right in the lower ranks, then you should find yourself coming out of the laning phase with at least 2 or 3 kills. And then for my second support, it's going to be Leona. So Leona's a great support pick right now, really tanky support who can still deal quite a bit of damage. You'd be surprised, like especially if you run cheap shot as your secondary rune there on Leona. Your level 2 all in is very strong, so look to play for that win condition on Leona. If you get really good on the pick and you can just look to take advantage of her level 2 and then as well as her level 6 all in, then you can just start having a lot of good success on the champion. So those should be your 2 win conditions on Leona. Play for those power spikes and you're gonna find yourself getting a lot of kills throughout the early game. And then for my final support pick to round it out, last but definitely not least, is going to be Zyra. So Zyra is probably the strongest carry support pick for the lower elos other than Swain right now. She does have great kill pressure in the laning phase, especially once she hits level 6. Very good all-in potential there. Her objective control is some of the best for any support in the game too. If you can look to fight around those early dragons at level 6 with Zyra, if you can just hit your abilities, you're gonna find yourself winning those fights extremely easily. She just has the ability to single-handedly win a fight, and if you do play the champion well, or even if you play the champion decent, you're gonna find yourself dealing most damage in pretty much all your games with Zyra support. So you don't have to rely on your team as much with this champion. You can be the carry on Zyra support. So that's gonna round out the video, guys. Those are, in my opinion, the 15 best champions you should be using to climb out of the lower elos for Season 10. So if you guys did enjoy the video, be sure to drop a like and subscribe if you have yet to already. So thanks for watching, have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.